Dr. Elias Mercer stood quietly in the observation garden aboard the Horizon Reach, a large human diplomatic ship. The ceiling was high and made of clear glass, showing the stars above. Around him, strange glowing plants from alien worlds filled the room with soft, shifting light. This was the meeting place between humans and the Tleri. The Tleri were tall, serious-looking aliens with shimmering skin and sharp silver eyes. They had long, strong limbs and armor that looked more like art than war gear. They were known for their strength, discipline, and cold way of speaking. They rarely smiled and never showed open emotion. Many humans were afraid of them. But Elias wasn't a soldier, he was a linguist. His job was to study languages and find common ground. He was chosen for this mission because he was calm, careful, and good at listening. Today, he was paired with Commander Varela, one of the Tleri's top warriors. She was well known among her people. Her presence was quiet, but powerful. She moved like a blade, smooth, fast, and always in control. Her skin was a mix of pale silver and deep blue, and she wore ceremonial armor that sparkled under the garden lights. They had been meeting for days now, trading words, learning about each other's cultures. It was difficult. The Tleri language was precise and full of meaning in small gestures. Elias had to focus on every sound and movement. Varela looked at him now, standing still like a statue. Then she asked, "What is the human word for something admired but not powerful?" Elias thought for a moment. He tried to find a word that matched. "Beautiful," he guessed. "No," she said, her voice like smooth stone. "That means outer appeal. I mean something admired, gentle, but still strong inside." He paused again, then smiled slightly. "Lovely," he offered. Varela blinked. The garden went quiet. Her silver eyes widened just a little. For the first time, Elias saw a faint purple tint rise across her cheeks. Tleri didn't blush, not usually, but she was blushing. "I'm sorry," Elias said quickly, thinking he had made a mistake. Was that offensive?" Varela stared at him for a moment longer. Then her voice softened. "Say it again, human." Elias didn't understand. "The word, yes," she said. "Say it again." "Lovely," he repeated. More carefully this time, she turned her head away, hiding her face for a moment. It was almost like she was trying not to show a smile. He tilted his head. "Did I actually say something nice?" She turned back, calm once more. "In your language, it carries a strange warmth. In mine, we do not use soft words, but that one, it feels unusual." Elias relaxed a little. "It's a compliment," he explained, "in human culture. Lovely is a kind way to say something or someone is beautiful, but also graceful, peaceful. It can mean many things." Varela nodded slowly. "We have words for war, honor, and fire. Not for that." For the first time, Elias saw her not as a cold warrior, but as someone curious, maybe even lonely. They continued their lesson for a little while, going over old Larry proverbs and comparing human poetry. But the moment stayed between them, quiet and unspoken. Later that evening, Elias walked back to his quarters. He couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Had he really made a Tleri commander blush? That seemed impossible. Tleri were known for resisting emotion. Some even said they considered it a weakness. He sat down at his desk and opened his logbook. He typed in the day's entry. "Spoke with Commander Varela again today. Accidental use of the word lovely caused a visible emotional reaction. I may have crossed a line or opened a door. Unsure. Proceeding with care." He leaned back and stared at the stars outside the window. Something told him this mission was going to be different than anything he had trained for. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ship, Commander Varela sat in silence inside her private meditation chamber. She removed her armor, piece by piece, placing each part gently on a black cloth. Her hands trembled slightly. No human had ever spoken to her that way before. No one had ever called her lovely. The word echoed in her mind, strange and soft. It didn't belong in her world of steel and code and strength. And yet, it stayed with her. She looked into a small mirror on the wall, a rare object among the Tleri, who valued function over vanity. She touched her face. Still remembering the warmth of the blush, she whispered to herself, not in Tlary, but in English, say it again, and somewhere deep inside her, something old and forgotten stirred something that hadn't moved in a long, long time. The next morning, Elias woke up earlier than usual. He couldn't stop thinking about yesterday's meeting with Commander Varela. That one word lovely had changed something. He didn't know exactly what it meant yet, but he was sure of one thing: Varela was not like the others. He got dressed, picked up his translator pad, and walked to the shared garden chamber again. When he entered, Varela was already there. As usual, she stood tall and still, her hands behind her back. But something was different. She wasn't wearing her full armor today. Instead, she wore a soft ceremonial robe, made of a silky, light blue fabric that shimmered when she moved. It was traditional Tlary clothing, only worn during important personal meetings or rituals. Elias blinked in surprise. Varela noticed his reaction and raised an eyebrow. Is my appearance distracting? Human. Elias coughed lightly and smiled. No, I just wasn't expecting robes. It is tradition, she said calmly. When two minds meet with trust, armor is set aside. He nodded slowly. Then I'll take that as a compliment. You may, she replied, almost like a joke, but her face remained serious. They sat across from each other near a glowing tree with silver leaves. A soft breeze passed through the chamber, though they were deep in space, artificial, but peaceful. Yesterday, Varela began, you said the word again. Lovely. I've thought about it all night. Elias shifted slightly. I was worried I upset you. She shook her head. No, I was not upset, only confused. We Tlary do not use soft words. They are rare, almost forgotten. But that word felt important. He opened his translator pad and showed her different meanings. In our language, many words carry emotion. Lovely is not just beauty. It means someone makes you feel something gentle. It's a word with heart. Varela touched her chin thoughtfully. Your people speak with heart often. Ours speak with duty. That's not a bad thing, Elias replied kindly. But I think emotions help us connect. She tilted her head. In my culture, emotions are dangerous. They cloud judgment. A warrior must remain clear and focused. He nodded. And yet, you're here, in robes, talking about feelings. For a moment, she said nothing. Then her eyes met his, calm but searching. I chose to come without armor today because I wish to understand, not just words, but meaning. Feeling. I want to know why your word changed how I felt. Elias smiled, not mockingly, but gently. It means the word reached you. Varela looked down at her hands. Then back up. You use language like an artist uses color. We use it like a blade. That's beautiful in its own way, Elias replied. But I think both ways can work together. They spent the next hour talking about expressions, body language, and how words could hold more than one meaning. Varela was fascinated by human poetry. She asked him to read one aloud. Elias cleared his throat and picked a short one. She walks in beauty, like the night, of cloudless climes and starry skies. Varela listened in silence. Her eyes closed. When he finished, she whispered, Your poets speak like dreamers. They are, Elias said. Sometimes dreams change the world. She opened her eyes. Your voice carries feeling, even when I do not understand every word. I hear what you mean. Elias felt a quiet connection forming, one he hadn't expected. Varela was not just a warrior. She was curious, thoughtful, and brave in a different way. But their moment was interrupted. A soft beep came from Elias's communicator. It was a message from Director Halberg, the head of human operations aboard the ship, Dr. Mercer. A reminder your role is to study and advise. Maintain distance. Tlary emotions are not your concern. Elias frowned. He knew what the message meant. They didn't want him getting too close, too personal. He quickly closed the message. Varela had noticed his expression, trouble. She asked. He shook his head. Just a reminder to be careful. She nodded slowly. Humans fear what they do not understand. So do we. They stood to leave. Before they parted, Varela looked at him once more. Elias. She said, using his name for the first time. He turned, surprised. Yes, her voice was low. Do not stop saying soft words, even if others fear them. He nodded, a little stunned. Then I'll say this again. You're lovely, this time. She didn't look away. She didn't blush. She only smiled barely, but it was there. Say it again tomorrow, she said, and walked away, her robe flowing like starlight behind her. Commander Varela stood at the far end of the Starview balcony, looking out into the black sea of space. Tiny stars blinked across the distance. They seemed peaceful and changing, but inside her mind, everything was shifting. She didn't understand these new feelings. The human, Elias Mercer, had spoken to her with warmth. He used soft words that the Teleri had long forgotten or pushed aside, and somehow, those words had reached something deep inside her, something ancient and hidden. She whispered to herself, again, barely audible. Lovely. The words still made her chest feel warm and strange. Footsteps echoed behind her. It was First Blade Karn, a high-ranking Teleri warrior and Varela's longtime rival. He walked with heavy steps and always wore his full armor, even in peace zones. I see you stopped wearing your armor, Commander, he said coldly. Interesting choice for someone on a mission of honor. Varela didn't turn to face him. This is a cultural mission. Armor is not needed. Chkarn laughed quietly. Unless you fear being seen as soft, she remained silent, refusing to rise to his insult. You spend too much time with that human, he continued. I've seen the way he looks at you, like you are something fragile. Finally, Varela turned. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Dr. Mercer sees more than most. He looks with curiosity, not fear. Something many of our own still struggle with. Chkarn's face tightened. Be careful, Varela. Our people are watching. Not all approve of your closeness to him. You represent our strength. And strength without understanding is just stubbornness, she replied. Chkarn narrowed his eyes. You sound more human each day. Then he turned and left, his heavy steps echoing through the corridor. Meanwhile, Elias sat in the research wing, studying a collection of old Teleri scrolls provided by their cultural elders. These scrolls were written in a forgotten dialect, one that had almost disappeared from their language. What he found inside surprised him. He highlighted a section and whispered to himself, emotions, feelings, connection, the old Teleri once had words for love, peace, even joy. But those words had slowly been erased from use. Their society had chosen survival and strength over vulnerability. Elias leaned back in his chair. So they weren't always cold warriors. He wondered what made them change. His thoughts were broken by the sound of someone entering. Varela stepped in, still wearing her soft robe, and looked curious. I was told you're studying old records, she said. I am. Elias nodded. Did you know your people used to write poems? Beautiful ones? Actually, Varela blinked. No, that part of our culture was buried after the Great War. Emotions were blamed for weakness. Elias tapped the screen. But they were also your strength once. Look here, this poem talks about open hearts shining brighter than swords. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Varela walked closer and read the passage for a few seconds. She said nothing. Then she looked at him. You see more of us than we do. He smiled. Maybe it takes an outsider to see what's missing. They spent the next hour reading more of the ancient writings together. Varela's expression grew softer as she read. She looked moved. But then, the screen flashed with a warning. Surveillance detected. Unauthorized observation channel. Open. Elias frowned. Someone's watching us. Varela's eyes turned sharp again. Chkarn. He stood up quickly. Why would he spy on us? Because he fears what he does not understand. She said, voice low, and he's not the only one. Later that evening, a quiet meeting was held in a dark room near the upper levels of the ship. Chkarn sat across from two other high-ranking Teleri and one human officer. Their faces were cold. Unreadable. She is losing herself, Chkarn said. This human has twisted her judgment. She has not broken any rules. The human officer replied, unsure. Not yet, Chkarn growled. But emotions are poison to our order. If she keeps listening to him, she will forget who she is. The others stayed silent, considering his words. Chkarn added, if she dishonors us in front of our people, it could break the alliance. She must be warned or removed. The next day, Elias found a message in his room. It was unsigned, written in sharp, clear words. You were brought here to study, not to interfere. Stay away from her, or you will be sent back to Earth. He stared at it in shock. He knew this was a warning not just to stop, but to leave Varela alone. But how could he? Something important was happening between them, something rare. Just then, a soft knock came at the door. It was Viola. He showed her the note. She read it and looked up. They fear change. They fear you changing, Elias said. She gave a faint smile. Then let them fear. Elias stepped forward. Varela, if this is dangerous, maybe we should. She raised her hand gently. No, we started this with a word. We will not end it with silence. Then, without armor, without fear, she whispered, say it again. He looked into her silver eyes and said it. You're lovely. This time, she didn't blush. This time, she smiled. And somewhere, in both their hearts, they knew change had already begun. The next morning, the mood aboard Horizon Reach grew tense. Word had spread quickly through the Tleri ranks about Commander Varela's growing closeness with Elias Mercer, the human linguist. Whispers and suspicious looks followed her everywhere. Varela herself felt the weight of many eyes on her. It was not just curiosity. Some viewed her friendship with Elias as a threat, a danger to their traditions and honor. The Tleri Council had called for a formal trial to judge her actions. In the great hall of the Tleri diplomatic wing, Varela stood tall. Around her sat the council, a group of stern-faced elders, warriors, and diplomats. Their faces were carved with lines of age and power. None smiled. The air was cold, filled with expectation. The chief elder, a tall figure named Zanara, spoke first. Commander Varela, Zanara began. You stand accused of dishonoring the Tleri people by allowing a human to influence your judgment and heart. This tribunal will decide if you have betrayed our code. Varela met Zanara's gaze calmly. I do not deny my friendship with Elias Mercer, but I have not betrayed the Tleri. A murmur spread through the hall. One of the council members, a fierce warrior named Korath, leaned forward. Our people have survived by strength and discipline. You speak of softness, emotion, words that weaken us. How can you justify this weakness? Varela answered without hesitation. Strength is not only in the blade or armor. Strength is also in understanding, in connection. We once had words for peace and love, words that did not make us weak, but whole. Zanara raised her hand, silencing the room. This is not a debate on poetry, Commander. The council demands proof. How can you show that your actions honor the Tleri? Varela took a deep breath. She glanced toward Elias, who was seated behind the human delegation, watching silently but attentively. I have studied the old language, she said, the one forgotten after the Great War. In those ancient words, I found a path not of weakness, but of wisdom, a path that can bring balance between the fire of battle and the light of compassion. She paused and continued, voice steady. If we reject all emotion, we lose part of our soul. We risk becoming machines of war, not warriors of honor. Another council member, an older female named Vela, spoke softly. Perhaps it is time to remember what was lost. The old ways may hold truths for the future. The room grew quieter, the tension shifting. Then Korath stood. This tribunal will consider your words, but be warned if you fail. You will be stripped of your rank and exiled. Varela nodded. Solemnly. Later, in the quiet of her chambers, Elias found Varela deep in thought. She looked tired but calm. You were brave today, he said softly. She smiled faintly. Brave is the only choice. Elias wanted to say more, but hesitated. Instead, he handed her a small device. It contains the poems I told you about. Ancient words from your people. Maybe they will give you strength. Varela accepted it with respect. Thank you, human. The tribunal's decision came faster than Elias expected. Varela was summoned back to the Great Hall. The council was divided. Sonara spoke again. Commander Varela, the council has reached a decision. Your actions show courage and a willingness to change. We will allow you to continue your work. But under watch, Varela bowed her head. Thank you. Korth's voice was sharp. But be warned, many among us do not agree. Some will seek to test your loyalty. Varela's eyes met his. Let them try. The days that followed were difficult. Varela found herself both respected and challenged. Some warriors avoided her. Others whispered behind her back. But Elias stayed by her side, offering support and encouragement. Together, they worked to build understanding between humans and Tleri. One afternoon, Elias showed Varela an old Tleri painting depicting two figures, one human, one Tleri standing united beneath. Twin moons, this is how I see us, Elias said. Not enemies, but partners. Varela studied the image. Then, looking at Elias, she said softly, perhaps your soft words are not so weak after all. One evening, in the garden chamber, Varela removed her robe and reached for her armor. But instead of putting it on, she hesitated. She looked at Elias. I want to try something different. He watched as she chose a lighter, simpler armor, one that allowed more freedom, but still held the traditional symbols of her rank. When she appeared again, Elias smiled. You look different, stronger, she said, but not hardened. They walked together under the artificial stars, their steps light but certain. Varela whispered, say it again, human. Elias smiled and said, lovely. Her blush returned, but this time it was steady, proud. The atmosphere aboard the Horizon Reach had changed, no longer just a quiet place of diplomacy. The ship hummed with tension. The alliance between humans and Tleri was fragile, and at its center was Commander Varela. Though the council had allowed her to continue her work, not all Tleri accepted the new path she was choosing. Some saw her closeness with Elias as a betrayal of their honor. Others feared the change that she represented might weaken their people. Chkarn, her rival, was more determined than ever. He moved through the ship like a shadow, gathering followers, and whispering warnings about the dangers of softening their warrior's spirit. But Varela was not alone. Elias remained by her side, studying the ancient texts and helping her understand both her past and her future. One afternoon, Elias uncovered a hidden section in the old scrolls, a story about an ancient Tleri alliance with a distant, now lost, alien race. It says here, Elias explained, pointing to the text on his screen, that your ancestors once shared a bond with another species. They exchanged words, culture, and feelings. This alliance was called the Pact of Light. Varela leaned closer, eyes shining with curiosity. Why would that alliance be forgotten? She asked out. Elias shook his head. The scrolls say it ended after a terrible war. Both sides lost much. The feelings and soft words were blamed for the failure. So the Tleri rejected them to survive. She nodded slowly, a new understanding forming. So the coldness we have now is a shield, a mask. Yes, Elias said gently, but it might not be the only way. Varela thought about her people, their pride and strength, but also their loneliness. She stood, determined. I will challenge the old ways, not to destroy them, but to heal. That evening, word spread that Varela planned to face Chkarn in an honor duel, not to kill, but to prove that change was possible. The entire diplomatic crew gathered in the training arena. It was a wide, circular space with high walls and soft light. Humans and Tleri watched in silence. Varela appeared first. She wore her lighter armor, decorated with symbols of both strength and renewal. She moved with grace and calm confidence. Chkarn entered, heavy in full battle armor, his face hard as stone. He glanced at the crowd and sneered. The duel was not about weapons at first. It was a test of skill and mind. Chkarn attacked fiercely, using brutal strikes and raw power. But Varela was different. She moved with strategy, using Elias's lessons about human psychology, reading his opponent's mind, predicting his moves. At one point, she dodged a heavy blow and whispered, "Lovely." The crowd gasped. Some did not understand why she said this word. But it was a message, a symbol of her belief in a softer strength. Chkarn faltered, confused by her calm and words. Finally, Varela disarmed him not with force, but by making him pause and see her not as an enemy, but as a warrior seeking balance. She extended her hand. Chkarn hesitated, then took it. The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, applause broke out. Not from everyone, but from enough. After the duel, Varela addressed the council again. "This is not defeat," she said. "It is a beginning. We can keep our honor and still open to change. The Pact of Light may guide us again." Sonara, the chief elder, nodded thoughtfully. "Your courage honors your ancestors, Commander. We will consider this path." Back in the quiet garden chamber, Elias and Varela stood under the soft glow of the artificial stars. Varela looked at him and smiled. "You change me," she said quietly. He smiled back. "Not just me. Both of us." She reached out and touched his arm gently. "Say it again, human." He took a deep breath and said, with warmth, "Lovely." Her cheeks tinted purple again, and this time neither tried to hide the feeling. The day of the new human cultural accord had arrived. The great hall of the Horizon Reach was filled with representatives from both species. The air buzzed with anticipation and a cautious hope. For years, humans and Tleri had seen each other as strangers, even enemies, at times. But now, something new was taking shape: understanding, trust, and maybe even friendship. At the center of it all stood Commander Varela and Dr. Elias Mercer. Varela's robes were simple but elegant. Her silver blue skin gleamed softly under the lights. Elias wore his human diplomatic uniform, looking a little nervous but proud. The head of the Tleri Council, Sonara, rose to speak. "Today, we mark a new chapter for our peoples," she said. "Commander Varela's courage to open her heart to change has brought us here. We acknowledge the strength and connection, the power and understanding." She paused, then gestured toward Varela and Elias. Together, they represent the hope that two very different worlds can become one. Elias looked at Varela. She smiled warmly. This moment was more than politics. It was personal. After the speeches and handshakes, the crowd began to disperse. But Varela and Elias stayed behind in the quiet garden chamber, the place where it all began. The artificial stars twinkled softly above. Varela turned to Elias. "Do you remember the first time you said the word?" Elias laughed softly. "How could I forget?" You blushed. She touched her cheek with a smile. "I never thought a word could change me so much." Elias stepped closer. "It wasn't just the word. It was you, letting yourself feel something new." For a moment, they stood in silence, sharing a connection deeper than words. Then Varela spoke, her voice low and full of meaning. "Say it again, human." Elias smiled. "You're lovely, this time." Varela did not hide her blush. She reached out, gently taking his hand. "We will face challenges," she said, "but now we have hope. Hope born from words and from trust." Elias squeezed her hand. "Together, we will show both our peoples what that means." As the stars shone quietly above, two hearts beat as one. Proof that even in the vastness of space, simple words could build bridges stronger than steel.